Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 6th ABSL IT Club by MoP webinar. It's a pleasure to welcome you all. I wish you a happy new year in the name of ABSL and our respectful partners and members. And may the year start with fresh ideas, thoughts, and advice. I think today's sessions will be a nice contribution to that thought. Before we start, I would like to remind you on some, so to say, housekeeping rules that we have at our ABSL clubs. I would kindly ask everyone except our speakers to keep their microphones and cameras muted during the club, and to remind you, if you have any questions for our speakers, you may ask them in our chat room during the whole event, and in the Q&A session in the end we'll answer it. A brief note is that these sessions are being recorded for the purpose of our knowledge sharing platforms that we have on ABSL. And if you don't want to miss a thing that we do when it comes to knowledge sharing, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So now we can officially start. It is my pleasure to welcome this morning with us from MoP, Belma, Alagić, who will be our moderator today, and as guest speakers today from Mistral, Ms. Azra Sarić, and from ZenDev, Adnan Oručević. I wish you a good webinar, guys, and good internet connection, as they say.
Thank you very much, Adi, and welcome everybody. I'm so glad that I see all these numbers here. I hope you're excited about today's topic as we are. Having a strategic plan, it's really important for every company, and every company kind of thinks about what is important, and it's always obvious what is important for a company to achieve, even if you are now working on the strategic plans. And if you were, you may have noticed that it's kind of challenging sometimes to reach your strategic goals, and even to draft them, which is okay. Sometimes it's really okay to fail, and you're supposed to fail sometimes. For example, if your goal was to increase the revenue by 40% and you reached only 35, you may think of it as a failure. But it's much better to do that than to set a goal that you can achieve, like set it on 30%, and then you claim success. If you set your goals a little bit higher, you can always strive to achieve more than what you really think it's safe for you. So those are some failures that are good, but sometimes there are more challenges. Perhaps you don't get to work on any of your strategic plans. Daily work and life that is happening around you eats away at your time, and you don't really do anything for your company, even if you've been working very hard. So we're going to be talking about many challenges, many mistakes, and many successes that we have seen in the past. And I'm very excited that today I have with me two of the most experienced professionals in IT industry, and they know really well what we're going to be talking about today. So without any further ado, let's start with my questions, and then please prepare your own, and don't be shy to ask, to comment, or maybe even to share some of the situations you were in. So my first question is for you, Adnan. So can you tell us, please, why is it important to have a strategic plan? Companies have a lot of work to do, and sometimes companies don't have really the resources of the people they really need, and they're really busy. Why they should bother with, having a plan, a strategy for a year that's coming up?
First of all, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us on this conversation. It's very important to drive a company. If you can imagine driving a company like driving a car, and can you imagine a situation when you are driving it on a highway and suddenly you just think about, okay, where am I going? This is working till now, but I have to decide in which direction I should go. And in that situation, if you imagine that you will have to slow down a bit just to think about, okay, what's my possibilities and what's our strengths and weaknesses, you will suddenly be hit by some driving backward. So basically, you will be pushed out from a highway. And that's the situation where most of the companies ended up without have strategic plans and strategic goals. So the same situation is happening inside of our companies, our industries. So you will have to decide what are your strategic goals for the future, where are you going, basically, how to prepare your company as you prepare a car for a road trip, and what you can do to achieve your goals. So without having at least decent plan, you will probably end up somewhere where you don't want to be. And that's why it's very important to at least think about the plans, about your actual plans that you are trying to work to. And also from the other perspective, maybe you have, and surely you have some goals for your company. And to achieve that, you will have to know the way how you're gonna achieve it. For example, you will first have to ask yourself who you are as a person, as a leader, and who are you working with to know better your team. I would say that it's more important to be aware about your existing anchors inside of a company that you will be faced tomorrow. Doesn't matter how good your strategic plans are, but you will be faced with those anchors if you don't get rid of them before that journey. So as I used to say many times, as Dwight Eisenhower says, that plans are not important as a planning. So you will have to prepare your team during the preparation of strategic plans. So once it comes to execution, they will be trained enough to face the new environment, new circumstances they will be faced at that time. Because we're living in a hectic world. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring to our table. And so that's basically the most important thing, why you will have to prepare yourself and most importantly, prepare your teams for the future.
All right, thank you. Azra, you come from Mistral, and I think we all know it's a very successful company, and we've been following your successes throughout the years. And as a company like that, I'm sure you always had your strategic plans mapped out. Am I correct? Or was the situation sometimes, other way around?
Yeah, you're not correct. No, we thank you very much. It's very good to be here. Hi everyone. Thanks for following us this morning. No, I think as you grow, you grow more mature in actually working out and writing down those plans. And I would say for Mistral, it's always been about purpose. So, for example, of course, every business is there to make profit. That goes without saying. But why we're here and why we're doing something is one of those questions that has always been at any strategic meeting, at any meeting that the founders had, was, okay, why are we here? Okay, yeah, we are here to make money, but at what cost? And it's always been not at the cost of losing the purpose, which was to create a really awesome working environment where people feel respected and feel that they can achieve their own personal professional goals. And that's always been there. Whether we've had it, whether we used what methodology to line out what the strategic goals for this year are, that's always changed, because you read one thing in the books and then you look at your organization, you look at your clients, you look at the marketplace, and then you think, okay, there are good points and there's always good things. And like, I hope you will draw some conclusions and key messages that we'll have at the end of this session. But again, you have your organization, and no two organizations are the same. And each one of them has good things and bad things. So what we try to do, and what we've tried to do in the past, is be better, a better version of ourselves for the next year, given the circumstances.
Yeah, so at the beginning, you, of course, when you were just starting out, you were trying to survive and validate your idea, and you did not have any methodologies in place on how to achieve like OKRs and something like that. But yeah, you always had focus, right? You knew what you were there to do for that period of time, and I'm sure, as you grew, your focus, changed a little bit. You always had that base. You wanted to be the company that you are, but I'm sure your goals were changing and your focus was changing throughout the years as you reached the next phases in your journey.
Absolutely. I think I would say Mistral was very adamant we wouldn't have any management until about 3 or 4 years ago, because everybody had, you know, their own responsibilities to do. And when you're a small company, basically founders are, business development officers. They play many roles in the company. So I really don't know of any company that started out with the management board that sits down and works out strategic plans, but a few people in the group saying, yeah, guys, this is what we're going to do. So let's try out. And then in the first years, I believe you are so busy with actually making business work then that you forget maybe to put time away aside for actually thinking out where you see yourself in 5, 10, 15 years time.
Yes, yes, and that's pretty natural because it's just the beginning, starting to validate idea. But as the companies grow, so are their business operations. You have more people, more clients, more outlooks out there, a bigger network, and I think if you don't really focus back on your business, you're thinking, yeah, we've succeeded. We've been here for 5 years. Revenues coming in. We're pretty good now. I think that's the perfect point for companies to stagnate and be run over by either market or competition, or they eat themselves inside because they just have so many things to do and they focus on daily tasks instead of, okay, what should be my focus next? I've achieved all that is supposed to be achieved at the beginning, and what should I do next? What can I do next? How big am I? What great things I can bring forward in the next year, 3 or 5. So, Adnan, how to define a strategic plan for the organization? What are the things that everybody should take into consideration? Should we just get the newest trends that we read about? There's plenty of books, plenty of articles, methodologies flying around, many trends going on. Should we just take the latest trend that somebody is saying, yeah, guys, this is working, this has worked for my company, and you partially answered that before, but can you be more detailed now about what should companies take into consideration when they are about to design a strategic plan for themselves?
Yeah, and I think the key sentence here is, as you mentioned, this is something that works for my company, because basically you're faced with a lot of strategies all around you, and well, they're good as inspiration for your own, but my advice for the people that are working with strategic plans, just use it as advice, nothing more, nothing less than that, because you're faced with completely another environment internally and externally. So you don't know who are you working with, and you don't know what will be in the future, what will happen in your niche. So if you Google, for example, if you Google it, what to do with strategic plans, you will find a bunch of articles there, and all of them are pretty much summarized in a few steps, basically. Just, okay, identify your organization's mission, vision, system of values, does some SWOT analysis, blah, blah, blah. So basically, all of them are the same. There are a few principles how deep you should go in each one of those bullet points. Very important thing, I would like to mention a few things that are really important. First of all is you will have to define your mission, vision, and also a system of values. That's a very important thing. For example, I will take our company as an example. At the period we started working with at the late of 2016, most of our employees were millennials or Gen Y. The further we go, we're faced with more people internally that
Bićeš
are...
ZenDev ili generalno?
Sorry, yeah, I'm talking about ZenDev. Someone jumps in.
Yeah, if I can just ask everybody to mute their microphones and just leave the questions until the end of the session.
And also, I think it's a nice question. It could also be applied for the other companies, because all of us are basically taking our primarily developers from the same pool. So most of our employees were millennials, and after some period, we're faced now that most of them will be the ones that came from Gen Zs. If you compare those system of values they are bringing with them, you will have to adopt the system of values inside of a company, because they should go in line. You can't have an older company and have a new system of values that will fulfill the Gen Z's expectations. So you will have to be updated on them. That's a practice that also Google works on it. Every here and then they are constantly does a service to update their core system of values, because people that are existing, that are basically part of a company, should be working and, as we call it, living internally with the same system of values. Another thing is also SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. There's also one statement I found out a few years ago, offer threat. So that means that every opportunity is some way of a threat for your organization, and each threat you're faced with could be potentially an opportunity for you. There is also a very important thing that we're doing, as you mentioned before, KPIs and OKRs, but in general, that's some sort of system of measurable goals and objectives that we would like to achieve. And also, further in the period of implementation, it is very important to communicate those strategies well, because what we were faced with during this period of creating some strategies internally, and also as our colleagues from Mistral says, we're not starting with the management. We're basically developing it still. So we've been faced with a lot of opportunities and threats on the road that we should somehow find a way how to deal with it. And the preparation period, the system of a training, the system that where we are sitting at the table thinking about the opportunities and threats that we should potentially be faced with, is the most important element of creating the plans. Not because just of the end result with some strategic plan written on a paper, but because of the future implementation of it. Because once you're faced with some offer threat, you most likely you won't be in the same conditions as you are before. Maybe you will change some of your key people. Also, you won't be the total environment, internal and external, won't be the same. For example, if you're working in SEO company, marketing company right now, they'll be facing with a lot of uncertainties once that ChatGPT pops out. So the momentum of thinking about the future development of a company, you can replicate it to the existing moment and think in light of that. So I would strongly recommend those people just to be aware of that, how important is preparation. The period, the process of preparation is basically the most important part.
Thank you. Well, throughout my experience, I've seen a lot of mistakes that are kind of avoidable when it comes to planning the strategy Sometimes the companies would maybe focus only on their competition. Okay, my competition did that, so I'm going to put in a strategic plan for my company this year. They're not really thinking about their customers, their clients, how different they are, what values do they bring on market, and how to expand them, but just what the competition does, and then I have to follow up. Other things would be that they don't take their plans. They either take them out of proportion, like I'm going to be number one in this industry in the world, which is like far out, or they just set the goals they can really achieve, so they can feel better about themselves. And sometimes they don't really take capacity and the nature of their own company into consideration. Like you were talking about methodologies earlier, they just see something and copy and paste and say, yeah, I need 5 people in management structure so they can pull all these things together. And then, they just hire those people, new people who are supposed to be coming in like 2 months, drive all of the strategy for the entire company, and nobody else in the company knows them and stuff like that. So what are some mistakes that you have experienced previously, and it would be great if we can have something really particular and what you have learned from that experience.
There was a lot of mistakes, honestly, because as you mentioned, preparation for the strategic plans, you're basically faced with a lot of uncertainties. And if you come from an ordinary ex-Yugoslavian or Balkan family, we're grown up in a way that you simply can afford mistakes, and that's basically my biggest mistake during my career, being afraid and trying to predict everything more or less alone, all possibilities. So if you end up in that situation without, how I can say, it kind of locks you up. And I have a few moments in my life thinking, or basically overthinking about the strategic plan, the strategies that I have to implement later on that I forgot to execute it. And that's something I was faced a lot of times before. And I have to be honest that a lot of great plans stays just on a paper, like a plans. And I would like to recommend to those people that are working on strategies, try to prepare as much as you can. Don't over expect too much from yourself. And from another side, try to make a good team around you and talk to people, because every plan that basically you create will end up on someone's back to execute it. If you don't include them earlier, you will be faced with a lot of the uncertainties and difficulties later on. And that's also a piece of puzzle you will have to think about. The sooner or the earlier you include them, the people that will carry on the execution of your plans, they will be less resistant later on, and you will be easier to predict most uncertainties. You have a lot of unknowns when you start with it. Well, maybe you are good at finances, but you're not good in software development. Or maybe you are good at processes, but you're not good with the motivation of people. So find a good team, find a cross-functional team, and prepare yourself. My failures was mostly derived from that, to try to make a plan alone. And that's something that I've been faced with a lot of times before.
All right, thank you. Azra, can you tell us a little bit about the late stuff that's going on lately in Mistral? You've been acquired. It's a really, really big thing and a really positive thing. How it is different now? Is there any difference when you know, thinking about strategy, what you want to achieve? You know, is it any different now versus when it's just been Mistral and before the acquisition?
Thank you for your question. It's definitely exciting. And that's one thing for sure. I'll go back a year ago and sort of talk through the way Mistral management has been doing strategic planning and so on. So I relate a lot to what Adnan said, and I think as part of the management team now, going back 5, 6 years ago, our co-founders, I think, very much kind of saved us from worries and really deliberated and thought about strategic planning on their own. And I think that's one of the mistakes people or leaders make, because a cross-functional team to share the worries and forecasts and opinions with actually makes for a better plan, or at least crystallizes goals in a better way, because again, the execution of those goals is actually cross-functional and across all departments. And then again, as a communications officer, I believe that unless we communicate them, you know, the kind of bigger picture, we can't expect from people to you know, feel either appreciated or to feel that they contribute towards fulfilling of those goals. So basically having a couple of days of focus on what's important, and then laying everything, brainstorming and laying everything on the table and from different perspectives, and then actually agreeing to core priorities of that year is a big task, and it needs focused times. So when we go into our daily responsibilities, we know everything is a priority. So when you start your day, you think, okay, I've got these 10 emails and there's these 10 clients we need to cater for. So everything is a priority. So basically goals help us to really decide what is a priority and say, you know, I'm going to focus on this for this quarter. And that's another thing that's really, and I'll say the mistake we've done so far is not really updating our strategic goals as the year went on, because we changed them. So we have quarterly updates, we have weekly updates on our priorities in terms of who's delivering which part of the strategic goal, because there's perhaps one owner, but there's many contributors towards fulfilling that goal. So I think, you know, in terms of communicating that, we communicated at the start of, I think, February last year about our strategic goals. But then obviously with the acquisition, you know, nothing was certain until it was certain, which was in, you know, 1st September last year. So we needed to tweak our goals for the year to cater for the changes in the marketplace and the changes in our own vision of where we see ourselves as going. In a way, in simple terms, if for those of you who understand the game Snakes and Ladders, we believe that in a way joining HTech has given us those ladders that we can actually scale up. It's a bit of a cheat to scale up faster. But that again, with itself in itself, will bring challenges in terms of, you know, from a company of 300 now, we've grown to a company of 2,000 plus across geographies, truly not just the Balkan people, but Southeast Europe. And that will bring its own challenges for sure. But again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that we will learn within Bosnia and Herzegovina, being part of a kind of a big Southeastern European company, or now a global company in a sense. So I cannot tell you what changes there are yet. We're still in the integration process. So in a way, we're just wrapping up our year last year, and but I'm sure you'll hear from us in the time to come as to how we communicate internally and externally in terms of where we're heading.
Great, thank you. Well, like Adnan said, plan is nothing, planning is everything. And that's pretty much an important topic to keep by, throughout the years. You're supposed to sit down and, plan and, really think about what you want to be happening in this year. But you do not control everything, of course, and you cannot predict everything. I mean, who could predict the war and the pandemic and stuff like that? It really happens. Sometimes you can predict some things and some threats coming in the market that's supposed to, flow by some pattern, but sometimes, and lately there's been a lot of things, that nobody could really predict coming our way. And what I enjoy currently in ministerial programming is to, just think about, we think about the year. This is what we would like to happen and achieve, but then we go quarterly. That's the only thing you can really control. It's about how your quarter is going, and then next quarter we just recalculate. We may continue, we may go back, we may just throw the whole thing in a basket and just start over for this quarter because it makes sense. It doesn't really make sense to stick with your plan because you planned it out. And then, but we'll talk about that more later on. Let's go back to execution of the strategy once you have it planned out. Adnan, besides the plan, okay, we now drafted everything. We got the people in the room. We brainstormed. We got great ideas. We even have a whiteboard and mapped it out. Somebody even put it in a Miro board. There's some, tasks somewhere on maybe Jira or something like that. But, what happens then? How do we execute things? What we need to ensure in order for those things that we map out to actually happen?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
If you ask any decent manager, what do you need to execute some plan, he will tell you immediately, I need resources. And that's basically the naked truth. But beside the resources, you will have to communicate well your plans, and that means that I came to management from sales, and there is one famous statement that people don't like something to be sold to them, but they like to buy. Also, that's the same situation is with the people that are basically working in a company. You will have somehow to align their interests, and surely all of us have our own interests inside of working inside of the company. But the question there is how good you are at the process of aligning the internal individual interests to go aligns with the company interests. Let's take an example. There is a lot of questionnaires moving around the internet, and when you summarize everything, salary is one of the top 3 things that motivates people to work more and to give more of them to the business they've been doing or to the work that they've done. If that's something that really motivates, then you can say, okay, we aim for this year to get better revenue and to decrease the costs internally by rescheduling some work. So basically that will end up with the situation where some people will have to work more. But if you can explain them that by doing this restructuring internally, they will be in a possibility to earn more. So that will even more motivate them to work and to take more responsibilities. But if you just jump in front of them and say, okay, we would like to have better revenue this year by X%, and we will cut some costs, more or less, more of them will be afraid, okay, am I going still to work here? What will be handled here? What I can expect in this year to be happening. Also, if you think about the current situation in the whole industry, where more or less we're talking about this just before this webinar, that more or less all companies are faced with some sort of restructuring and cutting costs. So the way you communicate it is probably the most important thing, because you will end up in a situation, if you don't communicate it well, people will be threatened from a lot of uncertainties they will be faced with. Another important thing there is accountability. We have made a lot of mistakes there, because in transition period from company managed by a few to a company that will have to have a management department, functional managing department. There was a lot of people that were sitting on multiple chairs, and later on you can point a lot of things to a single person, because if they were developers, suddenly they become some sort of managers, and you can't take them accountable by both of it. So not because they're not capable of doing both, but because they have to have focus on something, and you will have to prioritize some things. And that's very common for a company that are in transition period. So accountability, and it's derived from a clear list of the expectations for them, is very important part. Also, if you're thinking as overall, creating an environment of shared ownership that we aim to have with the profit share model is one step forward in the direction of both communication and accountability. So that's pretty much everything that is, from my point of view, important for the company to execute well.
Great example. Yeah, I have seen before, management, bring about all the strategy and set the strategic goals, and, either even tell you what your part in the process is. And then, they just want you with all of the other things. Do this, do that. Where's this? How's that? Why is this not done? Can we do that better? And then you're just running around achieving all that stuff. And at the end of the quarter, it's like, or the year, oh, you haven't achieved, your department's strategic goal for this year. And that's kind of the accountability, exactly what you say, what's my, of course, a lot of things need to be done, and they should be done, but a strategy is something, even with the companies that do plan a strategy for the year, they don't really understand what a strategy is there for. You're supposed to set up the pieces and do everything in that direction, like those little puzzles, and like with dominoes, you set them, and then you just should be move one piece and achieve three things. So that's why the strategy is there, and that's how we know that something is strategic. If you achieve that one step today, it kind of brings you closer to your goal, and maybe takes care of two or three other things. But I've also seen, I've been in a situation where the board had a strategy for the company and did not share it. At the moment I was sitting, in like a department that was dealing with the communication with the outside world, and, with other stakeholders, and I had no clue what the strategy was, and could not get that information even if I beat it out of the people. So, how do I know, what is my department supposed to deliver that month? I was just getting a little bit inputs like do this and do that, instead of getting the bigger picture, and it was really really tough. You were doing a lot of things but achieving very little, because you have no idea what your purpose is in that same system. Because if of course you're going to do those things, but maybe you can achieve them better, or do something else, bring something else in, to achieve the group strategy. But also I've seen the situation where the strategy has been communicated entirely to the staff, and then still people don't know, they don't read it, really care about it. So Azra, you're the real expert for this topic. Can you please tell us how to properly communicate the strategy or strategic goals, what you're supposed to achieve, and what everybody's focus should be? How to properly set that information out there?
I'm still learning, but I'll say we've had quite an experience, especially with Corona 2 years ago when it hit. We kind of mastered the art of critical communication at the company level and communicating with everybody the plans and what we're doing to successfully fight the situation on ground, in the marketplace as such. I'll start with the importance of people having a context and seeing and having an opportunity or giving opportunity to everybody to see a bigger picture. In terms of communications, it's really important to us to enable that so that people have an opportunity to listen to the founders or people who work on strategy, to deliver that to them verbally. Normally, we do it in the form of an online now, online or hybrid meeting. So the people have an opportunity. Do they want to listen to it? It's up to them. We record it, and we also normally present it. So people, what's important for us in the sense of, adhering to our culture of trust and transparency in communication, everybody in the company can access our annual strategic goals on our internal site, so that there is access for everyone. However, many people will, perhaps maybe 20% of people will have a look and will genuinely think about this. However, if you don't communicate it and you don't offer this opportunity, 100% of people will hate the fact and say, look, I don't feel included and I haven't been told, or how am I supposed to know? At least what you do as a responsible company is to give that opportunity and give channels for people to voice their either opinion or comment or feel included in that sense. So that's what I believe is really important. But as I say, not everybody always will have a constructive opinion and suggestion. So as people who work on strategy and communicating strategy, we need to be aware of that. It will not always be to everybody's taste, and there's always somebody who will say this should have been done better and I would have done this better. And of course, probably that's correct. But what I believe we need to stick with is to ensure that we give a chance for everybody to hear the bigger picture and to have an opportunity to voice their opinion. As with, I suppose, Mistral being a technical consultancy, in a sense, what our clients most appreciate is the fact that people who work on certain product understand the bigger picture. So understand their marketplace as well, and understand what the product that they're creating is trying to do and how they will make a profit with that product. So if they don't have that picture, they will just be doing their tasks and they'll check the box, I've done my task. But without that, we work with highly intelligent people who are naturally inquisitive in solving problems. So I think it's our responsibility to at least give them an opportunity to hear of a bigger picture in terms of our company and strategy, but also in terms of the project that they work on.
Yes, exactly. So by working in software development, I see a big difference when, you just go about and give people tasks. You develop this feature, make this button do that, get this smaller, get this different color. Instead of telling them, okay, we want our clients or users of that website or a feature, or whatever software product we're developing, we want them to be able to do this, experience that, have a feeling of, and then a long time we're aiming for this. And you describe them what needs to be done, but what you get back is like, yeah, I can do that, but how about also adding this, because it makes sense with that. You know, as you said, they're highly intelligent people, and if you give them a bigger picture, you know, you're not going to get what you ask from them, you'll get much more. And you know, that's why it's really important for, you know, people to know why are they doing the things they're doing and what ultimately we're trying to achieve. And you know, when everybody is thinking in that direction, you know, it's much less actually for, you know, somebody in a strategic position, much less for them to do, you know, instead of just, you know, overlook and watch and monitor and maybe control quarterly. That still does make sense, instead of, you know, doing everything yourself to, you know, achieve the quarterly goals. So how about all those changes in the market that we've been mentioning lately, like course correction? You know, when I was learning about strategy, there was a very important lesson, you know, course correction. You're driving a car and you know you need to go, but there's something in your way. You're not going to continue driving. You have to swerve somewhere. And, you know, driving a company, it's not like driving a car. It's like driving a car without any, you know, view up front. You only have rear view mirrors. So it's really kind of tough to see really what's going to happen, but you do know that some things can, and if they already happen, how do you change that? So my next question is for Adnan. Did it ever happen to you, like mid-course, half year, whatever, your plan isn't working out, you know, or, you know, it became irrelevant? Like, of course, it happened to all of us. Like, we have a pandemic and the war's been going on. So did it ever happen to you? And can you describe what was going on then? And, you know, how did you make those course corrections? You're muted.
I think better question will be, when can you remember if there wasn't any chance that sometimes plans goes as it used to be planned, because we're faced with course correction almost on monthly basis, because we're living in a dynamic world, and the percentage of change and the dynamic of change was never seen before like it. So I always get back to the point how planning is important for the execution of the plans. We made a lot of mistakes in the previous years by trying to keep up, trying to force the implementation of things we planned on a paper in the practice, and it doesn't go well in that direction. So try to, if you can imagine the people that are responsible for creating the plans and for creating the strategies as an artist, internal leaders, they're drawing a picture, but sometimes they're too deep in details that they could not see the full picture. And what you need to do there is you have to take some time to take out and see the picture as a whole. And after that, you get back into it and start drawing. If you move that to the practice internally in the company, you have basically each company are facing with the possibility to adapt to some circumstances and the set of rules they've made before. So it's kind of how well structured you are versus how adaptable you are as a company. The more structure you have, the less adaptable you are to the new circumstances. And to be adaptable from one side and to be structured enough from another side, that's the whole art. So basically, each manager will aim to be in a position where try to achieve the balance between the structure and the possibility of adaptation in the future process, how flexible you are, saying by that. So When you try to achieve the goals, you will be more or less always being faced with some internal and external influence, because you can't predict everything. And if you try, I mentioned that before, if you try to predict everything, you will end up with a lack of execution. I've been there, honestly. So it's a first-person experience. Go align with it, make a plan. When it comes to the position and you have to change the course, ask your people for their opinions. Very important thing, because another pair of eyes is very important in those situations. You don't always have to act upon the other opinions, because you will be faced with the consequences more or less, but you will have to get the other opinions in your equation when you start to execute the plan. So my advice for the people, once they come in the situation, it doesn't matter how tough situation it is. The most important thing is that you are together in that situation, and let's bring solution for a specific situation together. Because I saw a lot of successful companies, but I can't imagine a single company without at least a decent group of people that guides it. There is not a single successful company for a longer period of time that's guided by just one person. Trust me.
Yes, of course, and any theory in scientific world, needs to have the validation and cases against to be actually confirmed as something to be, taken very seriously. So, Azra, we've talked earlier about how important it is to communicate, for people to know what's been going on, to know, what their part in the whole process is and how they can benefit and, do their work in terms to what the company is trying to achieve. And it's really hard, and it's really hard to strike a balance of what you communicate for them to actually adopt that, to live that. And we've talked about how that important is. But once you've done that and now you have to change the course, how do you communicate that? What it seems that we're losing momentum, that people are going to think, they don't even believe in their own strategy. Now they're changing it. Why should I bother? So, how do we not lose the respect and how do we actually communicate those changes that we need to make?
That is an excellent question. Absolutely. And I would say, as a company that provides a service, so we literally rely on people providing a service. So we're not a product-based company. Everything we do relies on the trust with the people, the hard work, and that relationships that we have within the workplace. So I definitely second what Adnan had said about the team of people being on the execution side, and then they should be on the consulted side as well. What sometimes is important also to remember, though, that there are some, if we all are committed to our area of expertise, I think we are then in for having a successful company. So for me to look into, the way that the product is being developed and look at the product backlog and make a comment, it's kind of okay. Maybe I can say there's a few spelling mistakes in your user stories, but I'm not an expert in that sense. But I can perhaps be advisor on how we approach communicating certain aspects of our work to our community, being sensible again that everybody has opinion and they will listen. A person that's listening or thinking about our audience is the most important thing. So when we're thinking about internal communication, it's actually our core of our communication. Our Mistral's external communication is just kind of an echo of what we communicate inside, and our internal community is the most important thing. And with no changes, I remain the same regardless of what the company may be called and so on. And we had comments like, oh, it's really changed in what sense? I'm still there, Mess is still there, all the people are still there. So we haven't changed, and we're not likely, we are not going to change the way we do work and we communicate everything that we do in terms of our care about the people. We can only be better. But again, we are aware that people may feel uncertain, or there's a dose of, the uncertainty at bay. So why change? We have changed all the time. So I've been in Mistral now, it's my 9th year. It's nowhere close to what it was at 45 people, and that you can all go out for a meal in one restaurant, a smaller restaurant, and together and talk about your annual goals over dinner. We have moved, we have changed. We had to communicate the crisis that we had during the COVID, when the COVID hit, because we lost a major account, and that obviously reflected onto the company and our goals as well. What we try to be prompt in our communication, in a sense, when we knew for certain. The worst thing I would say that what I normally and my amazing team have to fight with is grapevine and gossips and what's being talked to in within a community, and which creates our people or other people to question. So what is true? And what is true is what we officially communicate to our community first. So in terms of when acquisition happened, there was a lot of talk about it, in a month prior to it. They're saying, yes, Mistral was sold and so on, and it wasn't the case. It wasn't true until it was. So the first thing is that it was communicated to our community first, before, it's only 3 days later that we communicated it externally to newspapers and so on. But our community found out, exactly what happened first. Although, again, and I would say I'd put that down to maybe the marketplace in Bosnia, that people talk a lot to their spouses or their families and so on, people who shouldn't be talking about the professional or business secrets, and confidentiality is not really taken seriously, which actually should, if legislative work works, people could go to court for about those things. Again, it was gossip, and it's just the level of gossip. We cannot communicate gossip. We cannot communicate something that has not happened. We cannot communicate. So it's a very ungrateful position as a communications officer, for example, to think, but is this happening? Well, it hasn't happened. There are talks amongst management boardrooms all the time. And for those of you who run companies that are on this call, you talk about possibilities and different avenues that your business will take all the time. You don't wait for the end of the year to think about the annual plans. You look at the marketplace and think, okay, what would be the next course of action for the future of this company? And there's so many talks, but there's only, 1 or 2, 3 decisions that you make in that course of action. So it is a challenge, and it's been a challenge, I hope. And the way that we've been, the news has been received internally, I can only say that I am absolutely amazed and proud of the people that I work with. And there's 320 people that I work with, and 250 of them that were there during the COVID times in 2020. The way they stood behind the management really showed that Mistral, or our community, is just more than just a numbers game. And it is all about the stories that you create, the bonds that you create with each other. When you have a proven record that you stand behind your people, you stand behind your teams, and people then they don't trust you from day one, but you prove it through the course of actions. Mistral's been around for 12 years. Mistral, in one way or form, is continuing its existence on a much larger scale and playing, with the big players now, but hopefully together. And so that basically relying on the community to understand, but not by you need to have a planned communication, so people don't feel like, oh, why did they call out this meeting all of a sudden? We have those regular meetings and updates with our co-founders, with the management, in terms of the channels are open for people to ask. So it's not just, to us, communication is an ongoing thing, regardless of the strategic plans, or it's an ongoing thing in a written and verbal form. And that's really important, so that people feel they have an opportunity to be informed, and we've given them that opportunity. So, I cannot predict what will happen. What I know now, that we are stronger than ever. We're very much a good, tight community, and I think we can get through the recession and crisis that we're facing as all of us together. We can do it successfully as we've done in 2020.
Yeah, so my kind of drought from that answer was to, build rapport, build trust, and the only way to do that is to communicate all the time the things that are really certain and that you're really certain about. Don't gossip, we were talking about that the other day. It's a real risk in this market. People just take it for granted, but it really is a risk to, your communication and your rapport and everything. But if you keep communicating openly and directly, not just, throwing what might have been and stuff like that, you build rapport, you build trust, and whatever happens, if your people trust you, it's much better to bring them on board and to keep the business going. All right, so we're kind of out of time, so I would ask Adi to tell us what's going on over there. Do we have any questions that we can answer for our audience?
Well, I must say it's quite a bit going on in our chat room, so I will try to debrief. First, a question for both speakers. On your opinion, has the recent recognition of BNH as an EU candidate country changed your strategic plans within companies? Belma, you might answer as well, because MoP is also in the market. Maybe, yeah, I was about to say that.
I think, well, it hasn't, in short. It hasn't, I would say, that the being recognized as a EU candidate country hasn't changed the strategic plans. We hope it will influence people not to leave the country. But so, not talking from a company perspective, but personally, I think NATO membership and the security that the country will have will make for people to feel safer to remain in the country rather than leave for Western Europe, because they can with their skill sets. But I think becoming a candidate country is not going to change, well, for immediate effect on our living conditions. But in terms of our clients, it hasn't really played. I don't think it's played a role to us. Primarily, our clients are mostly in the States. I don't think it affected that very much. I don't know about you guys.
Okay, I can jump in. I would agree with our colleague Azra, because we are also a multinational company, having an office in Sweden, in Gothenburg, and we already had that as called bridge to the EU, and it won't affect our strategic plans, at least for now, not for now.
Yeah, I would have to agree. As a company that deals with clients and partners worldwide, it was always important for us to follow standards that are, a really big requirement on the other markets, talking about Western Europe and US and other continents. So in terms of that, it's not going to change anything. We're just going to be keeping eye on, what's been going on in the world. In our own, in the companies like Mistral and MoP and ZenDev, we're just worldwide, no matter where we are. So in that case, it really hasn't, doesn't have an opportunity to change anything in our strategic goals. We will, as we were before, of course, I think I speak for all three companies, we will continue to, kind of get the most enjoyable environment for our people to be working in as a company, because that's what we can do as a company. And of course, we will try to impact the society in the ways we can. That's something that we've been doing before, and we will be continue doing no matter what changes on the country level.
Great. We have a question for Adnan. From your experience, what is important for Gen Zs as employees, unlike millennials, in terms of values?
Well, there is a few differences between Gen Zs and millennials. For example, what I read about, because it's not my expertise, but in general, as a person that's been working with a lot of people, what I read about it is Gen Zs are more dependable for the those gadgets we have, more dependable for the electronic devices and the information overall. So also one thing there is that Gen Zs are more relies and it's more often that they will stay longer with their parents. That's one more thing there. So in a meaning from the perspective of a company, what we see here is that if you basically you can make some room to talk with millennials and negotiate some things. You know, you can tell them, okay, this is the thing that we will have to do right now, and will probably have effects for both interests later on, or maybe not. But Gen Zs are the ones that would like to have results immediately. They're not, for example, from the other side, they're not suffering with trademarks and stuff like that. Well, we can formalize the thing and said, okay, it's not important to them if they're working for Apple instead of, I don't know, SKF company. It is, but not as much as important like it was with the millennials. It's for them, it's such a proud to be a part of one team that works with Apple. From another side, yes, career is a very important thing for the Gen Zs, but show them what they could achieve in a shorter period of time will mean a lot more to them than to the millennials or Gen Y.
Another question relatable to this, what you just said, Adnan. We received a very nice and I would say long comment from Nirmina. Thank you, Nirmina, very much, about the interesting things you said in the webinar. And she's saying, so you can both actually all of three answer. We need to adjust our employees to new generations. It is quite logical because we will not be able to find and keep employees, and if we don't do so. But what if these new values are not expected and accepted well from, so to say, old employees? When prioritizing one value over another, being considered even demotivating for one significant part of our employees. So have you ever experienced this kind of, so to say, generational clash in your companies?
Oof, this was a tough one. Okay, so would you start with that, or I can continue in this manner?
You may continue, then we can go over to Azra and Belma.
Okay, so what's very obvious here, if you don't adapt to the new circumstances, you will end up in a fault, internal fault with your employees, since you can't expect to have more old gens in the future. So you will have to take that as a fact, that you will have to adapt to the new circumstances, and you will have to find a way how to do that. Sometimes you will probably be faced with the thing that you will have to drop off your old values, deal with it. Any sort of other solution is simply not acceptable, because you know, the formula of success, each company has its own energy, and you can represent it however you want. The summarize of working hours, the summarize of the skill set that you've been growing internally for a period of years, or you'll be buying by engaging additional people. But when you're using that energy to calm down internally to, how I can say, to take out all the anchors that have been blocking you, to fight internal conflicts. You won't have enough energy to be faced with the marketplace. So deal with it, that you're gonna have to change yourself in the future, trying to find a way how, trying to find a way how to adopt in the best manner. There is also one famous quote from Isaac Hadishes. Basically, I'm a big fan of him. I'm gonna write it not to miss the point here. Just a second. I got it written somewhere. The very important part here. Oh, I won't lose your time. I will write it because we will have to. If I'm right, we will have to answer some of your questions here. So I would like to share that. Saying basically the formula of success. So there is only two things you will have to do in your company to be successful. Try to fight your internal thoughts. Try to win the internal battles you have in your company between the generations, between the interests, because it's obvious that different parts of company have completely different interests. And once you're done with it, then you're ready to face the external opportunities and threats. And if you can capitalize it fast enough, you'll be successful as a company.
Thank you, Adnan. Maybe Azra's thoughts.
You know, we are not the same people we were 3 years ago. So, but our values, the core non-negotiables, are more or less the same. So if you have, there's a saying, and it's a Bosnian word, and if somebody can translate it into English, I'd be most grateful. But it's obrazli. This is the basically when you respect and you respected and you trust and you trusted and that you're somebody, a person of your word. We had to redefine our values as we grew as a company, but they, in essence, they remain the same. But we had to rephrase them to explain what they mean. So, for example, when we'd say people first, people had assumed it's me first. People first, person but it's not person, it's people. So it's really, it's what you do as well as what you say that you fortify those values. Phrases can be misunderstood, understood, depending on how you're feeling that day, what experience you've had that year, how you've grown as an individual. So you may perceive a culture of trust as something totally different that you perceived it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. What's important to us is to actually, as communications office, to explain, or at least to have those definitions of why what these values are, because it's just a 3-word, but it is so much. It's so much more than that. So in a way, ever since Mistral was founded, really we've had that. The purpose was to build the best place of work where people want to stay. That's the most important thing for a business, was that we have high retention. So people have a good time, they feel that they can grow as an individuals, they are fairly compensated, and they have nice people around them. So it's building that culture, and it is the challenge with that is when you grow and when you have pressure to grow at fast. How do you sift through personalities and that cultural fit successfully? And that is a real challenge that I think we have amazing talent acquisition specialists who actually manage to make us grow, to keep those values at heart, and really important when selecting people to come to work in the company. So what I want to say is that, perhaps I saw 3 values that we have in different light 3 or 4 years ago, depending on my state of mind and what experience I had. But in essence, they are my non-negotiables. It is being, if I have a problem, I will tell you I have a problem. I won't leave you guessing in that sense. And you know, if I want to do something, I'll think about how that will affect other people on my team, and then how it will affect the company before I do something. And you know, if I don't grow, I actually am falling behind. And those are the things. We call it passion for growth, people first, and cultural trust, but they're the things that are essentially the same. We just maybe wear them differently, or in our head we see them slightly differently depending on where we are in what stage in our lives. So that in short, yes, you know, that you tweak them, but non-negotiables are kind of, you know, non-negotiables. Sorry, so maybe that's not the same as what Adnan said. But Belma, what's it like in MoP?
Yeah. Well, when I was just starting, I actually have to say I have experience with that because I was working with baby boomers, and they were quite different than millennials in the same, you know, way. Every generation is different, and that's quite natural. And every generation has, you know, some good things and some bad things, of course. I happened to have the experience that I was the youngest manager in a company. I was like 20 years old, and I was the boss to people, you know, who were like 40, 50, and, you know, they've been working for all those years and done nothing with their career. And I felt kind of intimidated by their age and experience, you know, at the beginning. So it's quite sometimes on the individual level hard to kind of bridge those differences. But on a company level, you know, they have to be taken into consideration. And diversity is one of the things that, you know, is the best thing that can happen to a company. Of course, we need to find a way to kind of bring out all of the values that different generations, different genders, different nationalities bring, etc. All of the differences in people bring to a company, because it gives you a wider set of skills in a workplace, and to ensure that, you know, we can learn from another, to keep, you know, what's good, and then we should try to limit what's not good. You know, like every generation, so do Gen Zs. They do have their, you know, positive things and some negative things, which is really what every generation brings. And we have to just set the professional tone. We have to set the psychological safety for everybody in the company. And, you know, sometimes what I see Gen Z is that sometimes, you know, they're very disruptive in terms of what millennials were, and I like that. I actually learn from that. I take on those behaviors, and I, you know, implement it into my own, because but sometimes they're like, okay, it's just my way, I think that way, and that's it. That's not really a positive thing that could happen to a company, because imagine everybody in company was thinking is just, but I want it this way. And, you know, that's not really how a collective should be behaving in any terms, because, you know, we as a collective are we, and then we have to take each other into consideration. And of course, it's, you know, if they're, as a person, each person, no matter when you were born, you should be striving to upgrade yourself. So if you belong to an older generation, you really want to think about what's been changing in the world in terms of everything, technology and the behaviors, and how you should grow, how time progresses. So if you're not ready to do that, well, you know, you have to think if you are the right person for the collective you're working in. If you want to be set in your old ways and do it all the time, well, you know, maybe think about the company, and the companies should think about, of course, first give those people the opportunity and challenges and tools to kind of upgrade, to build up, to, you know, learn more. But if somebody doesn't want to do it, well, no, I think the answer is obvious.
Thank you, Belma. Since
sorry, Adi,
yes,
I would just would like to say a few words, because it might go in the wrong direction. When I'm saying that we need to adapt to the new circumstances and to the new generation, I don't mean to drop the old values, not at all. But what I exactly mean is that we should find a way to adapt to a new system of values. Why? Because if you don't share the same values with the people that are working in your company, you will end up in a situation that nobody wants to work with you. So it means firmly that we need to adopt, not to drop off. That's what I would like to say.
Great, thank you, Adnan. Since we actually, like always, I must say, because the conversation was so interesting, broke the time frame, I would like to tell to all of our participants that the questions that we didn't have time to answer will be answered to all of you via email in the upcoming days by our speakers and moderator, and use the opportunity to say a huge thank you to Belma, Azra, and Adnan for taking the time to prepare for this webinar and share your expertise and experiences from your company. Since we had a lot of startup founders today, who most probably learn a lot from your experiences, especially having such a differentiate gap in years of experience and existence of companies. So it was really a pleasure to listen to you and to learn actually concrete steps in our strategy and communication and team values, because values are those things that bound us in companies. We shall all agree in the end. And to all our participants, I would like to thank you for attending another ABSL Club event and to announce that from the mid-February, we're starting over the year with our clubs, so you can expect many more of such interesting conversations, guests, and companies joining our stages in our clubs. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd say thank you to Adnan Zamitic as well. He set the question, so we'll answer that. We'll do a follow-up on any questions you guys have. Thank you for being with us for the last hour and a half.
Thank you very much, Adi, for your effort. And I would like to use this moment just to say how grateful I am to our marketing departments that stands behind of it. They're doing an amazing job, and oftenly we forgot to say thanks to them. Because if we're all of us basically come from the same niche, we're IT consulting companies, and our engines are the developers, but the wings are basically marketing departments. So thank you very much.
Adnan, I will quote you on that. Thank you.
From our side, also thank you to all three of your marketing departments, because you've done a great job, guys, in promoting this event and also following all the activities we're doing together for the past almost 3 years. Say a shout out to all marketing departments. Well,
Yes, for me as well. Thank you for doing a great job, and of course, Role 3 marketing. I think I see even the social networks were on fire, and all of the three gave a great job. And I would also thank to every participant to be here today, and for all your questions. Thank you very much. We will try. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but we will do our best to provide you, with concrete answers to your questions. So thank you very much for being with us today.
have a nice day.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.